My name is Austen Menges, and I've been a pro editor for over 20 years, and this is a hammer. What does a hammer have to do with video editing? We'll get to that soon. But first, if I had to start over as a video editor today, I would do it completely differently than most beginners do. In this video, I'm going to share the 5 steps I would take to get better as an editor as fast as possible. And the steps get more and more important as we go, so please watch to the end. Let's dive in. Let's start with the first thing most people get stuck on: tools. That's where the hammer comes in. If you were a carpenter starting out, how much time do you think you should spend picking out a brand of hammer? Not much, right? Maybe you'd read a couple reviews or ask somebody more experienced. And why is that? Well, it's because a carpenter is not defined by the brand of hammer they use, they're defined by what they build. But in the editing world, so many people get caught up, sometimes for years, arguing over what software to use. Should I use Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, Avid, Final Cut? My suggestion, just pick one of those 4 and get to work, because they're all sufficient and can do the job. But none of them will magically make you a great editor. The only thing that we'll get to that soon. And pro tip, don't argue over what software is better or worse in the comment section. Otherwise, you're just a carpenter arguing over brands of hammers, which is really just a way to avoid getting to the hard work of building something. Now, please bear with me as I continue this hammer analogy. So our carpenter has picked out their hammer. Now, they do have to learn how to use the hammer, so maybe they watch a tutorial, or better yet, they ask for tips from the guy who recommended this particular hammer. Now, which of these 2 options do you think would set our carpenter on the fastest path to getting better? Option 1, they watch a tutorial and get some tips, and they start their next build. Or option 2, they only watch tutorials on hammering for days, weeks, months, maybe even years. Unfortunately, I see so many editors getting stuck here because they equate editing with learning software, which is just a tool. So they go down rabbit hole after rabbit hole and watch software tutorial after software tutorial, avoiding the actual craft of editing. So my suggestion would be to quickly pick out a hammer and maybe watch 1 or 2 software tutorials. Honestly, if you know how to import footage, drag it into your timeline, and make an edit, you already know enough to get to the actual work of becoming a great editor. So our carpenter picked out their hammer and they've watched a couple of hammering tutorials. Now it's time to source some wood, or in case of editors, footage, sound effects, and music. And this may be the one thing that's most different between starting today and when I started in 1999 as a high school student. When I started, I was practicing with footage shot on a mini DV camcorder by 14-year-olds. It's an understatement to say it was not very inspiring. And then when I got to film school, guess what? I was still practicing on footage shot on mini DV camcorders, but with slightly higher production value. And it wasn't until much later that I got to edit really good looking footage. Compare that to today, where you can join a site like Artlist and get instant access to beautiful footage shot on high-end cameras in locations around the globe. So this is probably what I'm most jealous of for those of you starting your editing careers now. But our carpenter is still missing something. It's not quite enough to just start with a pile of wood. It's most helpful to start with some plans. And for editors, that's usually a script or a storyboard. And this can be trickier to find than just straight practice footage. When I was in film school, all the editors would be competing to try and edit the stories that had the most promise, and ideally the ones that had higher budgets that were going to be shot on Super 16mm or 35mm film. Yes, film. So my first recommendation would be to start building relationships with directors or producers who need editors, and that definitely takes some time. So my second option would be to join a course that has an editing project that you can practice on. Shameless plug for my editing course, which you can check out at the link below. Could our carpenter start to build something now that they have some wood and some plans? Yes. Is this the most efficient way to get better? Definitely not. In any craft, the quickest way to get better is to apprentice under an experienced craftsman. Now, this is harder and harder to find today, but it's still what I would recommend for you. Remember, at this point, you've only watched a couple of technical software tutorials. You need to learn the editing criteria that real pros use. For me, it's emotion, story, rhythm, sound, and action in that order. So I urge you to learn these concepts from a trusted guide and begin to apply them with your newly acquired footage and script. Now our carpenter has a hammer, has learned how to swing the hammer, has some wood and a set of plans, and even has a more experienced carpenter to be their guide. Here's the next place most aspiring carpenters and editors get stuck. They tinker on the same project for weeks, months, or even years without finishing it, or they do finish it, but they're afraid to share it because getting feedback is scary. The key to becoming a great carpenter or editor is to work on a project, get feedback, refine it with that feedback, and then finish it. And what's the most helpful feedback? Is it from other new carpenters? Well, that can definitely be helpful, but the best feedback to make sure you get better as fast as possible is from that more experienced carpenter who's been helping you. So, work on a project, get feedback, refine it, and finish it. Work on a project, get feedback, refine it, and finish it. And this step is the step I'm on today. It never ends. I've been at this for more than 20 years, and I'm still taking on new projects, getting feedback from people ahead of me, refining it with that feedback, and finishing it. And for every project, my goal is to learn something new so the next project I make is even better. I know from experience that this is the fastest way to become a great editor, and that's why I've built my editing course around these very steps. My students are improving fast because they're learning the criteria that real pro editors use, they're applying it to a fun project, and they're getting feedback from me. If you're interested, check it out at the link below. I'd love to be your guide. However you go about it, my main hope is that this video will inspire you to take action to start learning the real craft of editing and not wasting too much time watching hammering tutorials. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and you'll definitely want to check out this video next. Happy editing.